Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Liberty Show with Kevin Fortune. This is a national platform where you, the citizen, can speak out and speak on things that's on your mind from a point of liberty and freedom and justice. And tonight we have a very fascinating and exciting, energetic show. Seemed like it wasn't going to take place. I was having technical difficulties, but where there's a will, there's a way. We never fail. We never get up because we have Superman Jared doing the technology and he's helping me. So guys, tonight, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. You know, with the economy, with COVID, a lot of people are working from home. A lot of people have lost their jobs. But what about the concept of hiring yourself, working for yourself? And tonight, we have three very special guests, some very exciting people that have practiced entrepreneurship, that put their entrepreneurship into action, into fruition. And we're going to talk to them, hear how they got started, what they're doing, and how it relates from the angle of liberty. So let's get started without any further ado. A good friend of mine from Atlanta, Mr. Ivan Alpha. Welcome, Ivan. You're on the Liberty Show.
What's going on, party people? Hey, guys. How y'all doing today? So I'm Ivan Alpha. That's my pen name. My real name, Ivan Alfaro. So today I'm excited to teach y'all about my level of experience in the entrepreneurial world. I came from Chicago, Chirac, growing up in kind of a lower income household, had to get some thick skin, figure out how to make real money. Started off in the web design world. I started as soon as 12 working, really. All throughout high school, started learning web stuff. But over time, I worked, McDonald's, I worked small business, worked into corporate, worked the corporate ladder, all that's usual stuff. But then I realized this is not my American dream. I want to make my own real American dream, which ended up being building relationships, building great real estate assets, having rental properties, doing real estate wholesaling, selling flip property. So I did that by the age of 27. I was able to get about over 80 units, rental doors in my portfolio. A deal, please throw it at me after the show. So now, I was able to leave my job at 27, and that's what I do nowadays, just real estate full time.
Well, okay, and Ivan, I'm also from the Chicago area, so you got one brownie point with me. But also, Ivan, you came pretty famous from McDonald's. You mentioned that, I always brag on you. You went from flipping hamburgers at McDonald's to being a successful entrepreneur. Can you give us a little bit? People always want to know, how did that happen? You don't have to go into details, but what kind of process was that of you getting started from the corporate world to running your own company?
So it comes down to sacrificing everything you can to get ahead of the curve. So all throughout, having regular jobs and things, I would figure out ways to creatively get properties, not necessarily all the time with my own money, because I realized at one point, even if I have a good chunk of money, there's only so many properties I could buy, right? I took on capital partners. So for me being able to leave my job, it took, I actually wrote a book on this, From Minimum Wage to Leaving the Rat Cage, which is on Amazon if you want to check it out. And it just draws out my journey of having left my job and what that looked like. I kind of had a little identity crisis because I went from work-based, hourly-based work of making money to effort-based, where you can multiply your money. And it's a much more higher reward if you educate right and you actually move forward right. So it's a different animal. It kind of produces a kind of identity crisis of sorts, but at the end of the day, it could prove higher rewards because you could build generational wealth from it.
Okay. I think you brought out some great points. Tell us a little bit about your company, the name of your company, and how we can get in contact with you, or any website information you have.
Okay. So my main investment company is called Commonwealth Properties, so commonwealth.com. If you want to get involved in purchasing rental properties alongside us, we have a fund where we do affordable housing at scale. So that's a big passion of what drove me to do heart-based work as opposed to just kind of chasing a dollar. If you do heart-based work, you could do a lot more, a lot faster. You get this jump out of bed type feeling. And so commonwealth.com is how you could get in touch with me, or you could if you want to stay in touch about training events, go to leavetheratcage.com.
Okay. So tell us a little, so your training events, is that where you train people to do what?
So learning real estate game, getting rental properties, doing real estate wholesaling, volume, flipping of property, flipping paper. You don't necessarily always have to actually fix a property to be able to sell it. So we call that flipping paper, just giving a deed for a assignment fee. So I teach all these sort of things. Kevin, we did, and Jared, we did multiple events together, one in Wisconsin, one especially big one here in Atlanta at a special, a tavern. So it's all a great time. I usually do one event every quarter. My next one is likely going to be for Atlanta RIA, which is a local organization that has about 12,000 members. So I'll do a virtual session, but they also want me to, once COVID goes away, actually come in person and do it like that also.
Okay. Interesting. Yes. We are friends. I guess we're still friends. Now that you're congratulations, you're newlywed. But no, we've had several great events together. And the one thing I want to point out is that, and I'm glad that you brought in your upbringing in Chicago, and that you're just an ordinary person. And I don't mean that in a negative. I think that a lot of people think they have to be these super great people, super educated, all this money, but you can come from very ordinary beginnings and really still be very successful. You agree?
I agree, man. Look at a guy like Bill Gates. His interviews, he looked like he just woke up. Total normal dude.
Yeah. So let me ask you, we've got a few standard questions, then we'll move on. Then we're going to come back and open it to the whole panel. But being the Liberty Show, first of all, how has COVID really affected your business currently? We try to keep up with current topics. How has that affected your business and your industry right now?
So one aspect to my business, there's a couple, it's called wholesaling. So I usually have a bunch of sales associates. They are cold calling, hey, do you want an offer for your property? All the time, just calling. And that's where I could get volume amounts of leads so I could purchase them myself or flip the paper. So what I've noticed is in that Atlanta market, it's interesting. There's a little bit strict rules around, you can't do evictions, you can't do foreclosures. And then on top of that, we see some saturation of other wholesale companies scaling up here. So what I've had to do is change my market. So now we're looking at North Carolina, we're looking at Texas, we're looking at Florida, Tampa area. So we've had this shift, and that's also a part of being an entrepreneur. You can't just sit in one area and just hope for the best, just kind of in a corner, like this is going to keep working no matter what. Like, sales number one, you don't just figure out what's okay, what's the plateau, or what's going down. You want to figure out the innovation, always be ahead of the curve so that you make the maximum amount of profits. You're not the one on the back end of profits. You're making the measly bucks.
That sounds familiar. Sounds like some of my teacher, but I always tell people, I also do entrepreneurship coaching and business coaching, and that is so important. A lot of people really get stuck. You've got to be flexible as an entrepreneur. And I use the word malleable. You got to be able to mold yourself and change with the times and just change with situations. And I think that's very important. One last thing, and then we're going to move on and come back to you. But you already alluded to the fact, being the Liberty Show, we're about free market capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, and very less limited, if not at all, government control, especially in the business arena. And can you just talk about some of the regulations or problems? Have you had any problems with the government and some of their regulations hindering your business or affecting your business?
So with the amount of foreclosures being limited right now, which was a big sector that we would purchase from, obviously it used to be dozens a month at the very least that would be going into foreclosure, but obviously everybody's getting a forbearance. So we can't go into those motivated sellers and folks like that because they can't actually foreclose upon them. Also, along those lines, people can't get evicted. So if we want to purchase a flip property, that may be a little bit dicey if the tenant, is kind of difficult. There was a tenant, a lead that I heard from one of my associates recently that we tried to go to their house, but the tenant actually released two pit bull like dogs out in the yard so that they wouldn't approach the house. So you get stories like that, right? Which is why I'll leave one more little gem here. You have to diversify what you do. Like that's the sales business, but I have money on the rentals business coming in, right? So that my risk is offset by that.
I agree. I always recommend too that you don't put all your eggs in one basket, and especially, I always teach, and there's a foundational principle which I was going to mention later. But number one is this a brand new day, and that's a great point. That in this new day, in this 2020, almost 2021, just doing everything one way or the way it's always been, it's just totally different. Thank you so much, Ivan. Good to hear from you. I can always count on you to bring lots of joy and energy to the show. Don't go anywhere. We're going to ask you some questions later. But let's move on to one of my favorite ladies of Liberty, a great friend of mine, entrepreneur, a very creative person, Miss Caroline Leyburn. Caroline, welcome. You're on the Liberty Show.
Great. Well, thank you. So yeah, I've had one business going on for a long time and one that I've just recently started. So I'm an architect and I design homes and home remodels. My company is called Caroline Leyburn Unique Home Design. And my focus is basically on having the home be all about expressing the personality of whoever lives there. I sometimes use the example of the Addams Family. Like that's a house that's very well suited for, it expresses who they are very well.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really picture them in, say, a mid-century modern, it just doesn't work. But during the COVID thing, there was a little bit of a slowdown. I don't know if it was COVID related or if it was because of changing websites, but I started making playhouses. You can see one in the people listening can't see it, but y'all can see one of them in the background behind me there. And so I'm kind of excited about starting a business that sells playhouses.
Interesting. Well, tell us a little bit. Well, I do know you're very creative, and that's one thing. I really like what you said about the personality with the people. That's really interesting. I think one thing I also recommend to my clients that you need passion with whatever do, and you're really passionate about your business, and I just think that's a unique concept. So kind of talk about a little bit more about the personality. So in other words, you curtail the project to the person. It's not just this ABC 1, 2, 3 stuff you build and just throw out there. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. Just try to get away from just the basic box that looks like every other house on the street and try to, not try to clash with the neighborhood, but at the same time have it be about your identity as opposed to you're just one more cog in the wheel,
Right. And you mentioned COVID. So how has COVID affected your business? That's our standard. How has that affected your business thus far?
Well, yeah, I mentioned that there was some slowdown, and I don't know if that was COVID related or if it was just I changed to a different web address, and it may have been a slowdown because just having trouble finding me. I don't know. But for whatever reason, there was a little bit of a slowdown. Other than that, there wasn't much effect because I've been working from home anyway. So
that's an interesting. That's good. So what do you think of working from home? I love working from home, but then I get sidetracked because I love music, and if I put on Billie Holiday, it's over with. Nothing gets done. So how do you discipline yourself?
Well, I do like working from home, and discipline could be an issue, but you mentioned problems with government, and I'm in Brookhaven, and the business license thing here, they have it where you have a choice. You can either have up to one employee who doesn't live in the house work there, or you can have clients come to your house. I'd like to have both.
Okay.
So that's kind of a restriction. I've got a draftsman, and he's actually working from his house most days, but some days he's here. And, I don't know if they would give me a pass, like let the clients come when he's not here, or,
Wow. Well, that's interesting. Let's talk about that for a minute. You are a great person of liberty, and you have, we've worked together on many libertarian projects, not just with the party, but in free markets and in civil rights and individual rights and freedoms. We have a common friend that's actually on the line tonight, Dr. Dana. And so just talk about what do you think of the government's intervention into the free market arena? What do you think about laissez-faire free market capitalism?
Well, I like it. I mean, I the problems that I have tend to be I think about Ayn Rand's, Atlas Shrugged, where she talks about a nation of men versus a nation of laws. I mean, the problems I have are when different people can interpret things different ways. Like I had a client a couple of years ago where before they bought their property, they went to DeKalb County to ask, okay, is this a drainage ditch or is this a stream? What are you going to call it? Because if it's a stream, you got to stay 75 feet away from it. And if it's a ditch, they can come right up to it. And that makes a big difference. And the guy says, yeah, that's a ditch, So they went ahead and bought the property. Well, then we got going on the design, got most of the way done. And then it turns out that guy got a job with the state of Georgia, and his replacement said, oh, no, that's not a ditch. That's a stream.
That sounds like big government.
But I'm such a nice guy. I'm not going to make you stay the full 75. We'll cut it down to 65 for you out of the goodness of my heart. So these people wanted a single story ranch with a certain amount of square footage. Well, all of a sudden it couldn't be single story anymore. We long story short, we designed a 2-story, which wasn't what they wanted, so they decided to sell it. But just because of a change in personnel, they lost whatever $20,000-$30,000 worth of value off their property. It's just when laws can be that arbitrary, just who interprets it. It's
Right. That's a great point. Well, thank you, Caroline. Don't go anywhere. We're going to come back and ask you guys all some questions in a second, but we're going to move on to another great friend of mine, a man I do know believes in free markets and laissez-faire capitalism, Mr. Danny Kellenberger. Hey, Danny, welcome. You're on the Liberty Show.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. It's great to be here with you guys. Looking forward to having a good night with all y'all.
Okay. So tell us about yourself and your business, Danny.
Okay, well, I'm a little bit of a background like Ivan, where I grew up in Illinois, not Chicago, but I was born there, so I get a half a brownie point. But I grew up on the south side of the tracks, and I was fortunate that my dad always drove us as a family around to these big neighborhoods, and like, Danny, who lives in that big house? He's probably a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. And look at the lifestyle that they have, and then we go down and look at yachts, and then you drive by golf courses. So ever since a little kid, I've always had that idea of a lifestyle in my head. Mm-hmm. And then I go through life and I start hearing what everybody else says to do, go to school, get a good job with benefits, and you live the American dream. And so I went that route, and I forgot everything that my dad taught me when I was older, until I realized that when I was about 40 years old, I was living in a rut. Mm. And a rut to me was really just like a grave with no end. It just keeps going on and on. And I wasn't living the life that I wanted, like Ivan said. I had wanted the lifestyle my dad showed me when I was a kid, but I forgot about it because I got stuck in corporate America and trying to do the rat race and trying to make ends meet and learn how to stretch a penny to make copper wire so I could have a little bit more money. And it just never really worked out. And then when the economy crashed in 2008, I was looking. My job got cut in half. My wife was staying at home. We just moved into a big fancy house in suburban Atlanta. And everything went down, 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 down in a hurry. So I was like, I need to make money in a different way than I am now. And I met a man named Randy Spence. He became a mentor and a coach and a business partner. And he introduced me to a whole different way of looking at things. Mm. And I partnered up with him, and I had to learn a lot. I had to develop thicker skin because mine was like paper thin. You just like poke it and it might rip. And I had to learn how to become an entrepreneur, but I was hungry for a different result. And I think that's the biggest thing that holds a lot of people back from going on is, what is your hunger? What is it that you truly want? Are you willing to pay the price to get what it is that you want? And when I sat down with Randy, I wanted all this stuff, but I never really thought there was a chance I was going to get it until he showed me that if I work hard and I follow a system, that I can do it if I learn and I grow and I become and I change throughout the process. And so that's kind of what we did. And I'm not arrived anywhere. I'm on my own journey. I'm learning a lot. I have a lot of failures and setbacks and successes, but it's definitely a whole lot more fun than punching a time clock.
Well, tell us a little bit about life leadership. In being transparent, I'm actually part of that thing. The King of Liberty is part of life leadership. Really a great company because it's a different concept. It's sort of like multi-level marketing, but it's very honest, very, very libertarian. That's what blew my mind, and very free markets. So tell us a little bit about how it works.
Yeah, I'd be glad to, Kevin. Thank you. And you made a wise choice when you partnered up with us, and it's been a lot of fun working with people like yourself, people who have success thinking already. Growing up, I heard about all the MLM things and be careful, you take the shirt off your back and you won't have any friends left. And so I was super hesitant to do anything remotely like that. But this company, Life Leadership, it's all about win-win or go home. Like, they have a vested interest in helping me be successful. So they're going to pour time, energy, and money to help me get my goals and dreams. So it's an old Zig Ziglar saying, you help enough people succeed, then you succeed yourself. And
Right.
everything they do is principle based. It's all about not what feels good, not what feels right. It's like, what is the bottom line principle? And as long as they get the bottom line principle right, then everybody will prosper. And these guys are just phenomenal men who started this company because they felt that all of us should be chasing our goals and dreams and living the life that we wanted instead of the life that we were living, which sometimes didn't even qualify as living. It just qualified as existing, right?
Right.
But they introduce a systematic way to grow you, to teach you what you need to do to get from an employee-based to a successful business mindset. Because a lot of us just don't have the thinking, because if you're like me, you get stuck in the public education system. And from the moment you're in there, it's like, you can be an employee. If you do this, this, and this, you'll be a great employee and you'll get your benefits. And when you retire, you'll have Social Security and you might have a penny or two, who knows? But it's a whole different mindset to be an entrepreneur. You have to have the discipline, like Carolyn's saying, and you got to have the guts, like Ivan was saying. And it's just not taught anymore. So you might have an idea that you want to go chase, but how are you going to really go about doing it? Because it takes a whole lot of parts of you to be successful as an entrepreneur.
That's a really great point. And just to let our viewers know that Life Leadership is I guess you call it financial education type system. They've got great books and tapes. What I love about it is very libertarian, free market based. They deal with less government. They talk about the Federal Reserve being on the gold standard, everything that we stand for. So I do recommend, I may be a little biased, but they really have some great materials, guys, that are very helpful, life-changing. They actually have some very good practical manuals and workbooks that you can actually work with. So what is it, the green box that they have? Is that correct, Danny? Is it green box? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's correct. It's the green box. It's one of our best-selling products. It's just the 47 principles to financial literacy so you can live debt-free. And it's not rocket science, but they lay it out in a way where you don't have to be a CPA. You don't have to have a master's in accounting or taxation or anything crazy like that. It's just very easy and systematic to follow it. And you choose what you want to follow, which 47 principles. So if you follow 7 of them, you can make a dramatic difference in your life.
Right. And it's really great, guys. It's just really helpful to find a company that actually practices laissez-faire capitalism. We did a show on big corporations. This is a big corp, but they really practice libertarian and liberty, the mindset. And we will put a contact for you, Danny, in our show notes if anybody wants to contact you or find out more about it. So now we're going to transition and go to some of our questions, some of our other our panelists, some of our podcast team. But first, I just want to remind you that you're listening to The Liberty Show with Kevin Fortune. And make sure you like us on Facebook, Instagram, follow us. Also on YouTube, hit that like button and subscribe. But also leave us a comment on YouTube, Anchor, Spotify, Apple. Let us know, what is your entrepreneurial dream? What's your business dream that you've always wanted to do? So just leave that down in the comment section. So now we're going to go all the way down to the Sunshine State. We've got my favorite conservative. He knows a lot about capitalism, free markets. Mr. David, welcome. You're back on The Liberty Show.
Thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here again. And I want to
how's the weather in Florida?
Well, it was real sunny and hot this morning at a Little League game, but
okay.
We got a rain in the afternoon.
Oh,
what
boy.
I want to do first off is thank your 3 guests to talk about their dreams and how they pointed themselves in the right direction. And it usually happens when you change inside first, when you realize, and then you're willing to adapt. All businesses have to adapt, the innovations. And to hear those stories, that gets my heart pumping good, because I never viewed myself as being able to own his own business. And I can see I put the shackles on myself. So your guests really hammered home some interesting things about how their businesses had to adapt. Now, we're in a different environment today, and the world around us is in turmoil, But these men and women were willing to change their perception of what was going on and made it tailored to their business so that it will be successful. So in a free market system, we have that ability. So when part of the turmoil comes in and we hear Marxism, socialism, the system doesn't work, it's broke, burn it down, I'm thinking these people are nuts. And there's nothing holding you back but yourself. And that's the greatest thing about this country, is that we're free to do whatever we can as long as I don't infringe on other people's freedoms. And you talk to an immigrant that comes from another country. They came here 20 years ago because they appreciated what we had to offer here versus what they had to do, whether it was Cuba, Africa, the Philippines. So once we change and decide to be a different country, I don't think we'll have any immigrants anymore. I think we'll have a closed society. So I'm so happy to hear people that are out there that are wanting to lift up and to succeed. And when you succeed, you find that you mentor other people, you're helping other people. So your journey isn't just by yourself, you're bringing others with you. And I have a slogan that I like to use, and it's livelihood matters. If the government shut us down and I can't go to work anymore, I better come up with a way, because I got a bank payment I got payments to make, my credit card, my house. So I've got to put my entrepreneurial skills to figure out how I'm going to make ends meet. And necessity is the mother of invention. And I'm sure all your guests today would say the same thing, that they know that a lot of their ideas have come from a need to succeed. So I appreciate the time that you gave me to talk today, Kevin.
All right. What about Damon? Damon always has something good to say.
I don't so much have a question, but great info from everybody that was involved. And the one thing I can truly say from as a libertarian-minded person, I can truly say that one of the main problems with entrepreneurship, or the challenges that are added to entrepreneurship that shouldn't be there, is the government, providing impediments to people succeeding. So for me, for instance, I'm in the transportation industry, and for quite some time, probably within the last several years, the government decided to, in the name of safety, making it to where the drivers had to use electronic logs. And so prior to that, the drivers were able to use paper logs. And, a good driver can basically get about 600 miles in a day. But with electronic logs, it really limits what the drivers can make. So there's a point in time in which the drivers, which are already in short supply, and there's a big demand for drivers, it makes the drivers that are good to say, look, I don't even need to do this anymore. For what? Because the government's impeding me from making good money, because it's limiting the number of miles I can do in a day. So, entrepreneurship and government regulation kind of go hand in hand in saying, look, if the government gets out of people's way and lets them do what they do, then people can make more money, and everybody can be more successful. And so in the big picture scheme of things, if people are able to make more money, then the government has more through the ability of taxation to make more money, but that's not how they look at it. They're basically cutting their nose to spite their face.
Yeah, excellent point, Damon. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. All right, I see Charlie has something to contribute now. Welcome, Charlie. You're on the Liberty Show.
Hi, Jared. Thank you. I don't really have anything to contribute, but I did have a question for, I think, Ivan, if he's still on the show. I guess, Ivan, my question to you is, how can I say this? I've worked in the real estate business as well as a closer and things of that nature. I'm currently working for a great company, so it's not like I want to leave the company and become an entrepreneur, but I was thinking of doing, a business that I can do on the side part-time, which was loan closing, because I've always been a closer. But I learned that I wanted to know if you've heard this as well, in the state of Georgia, that it's an attorney state in which an attorney has to be present when it comes to doing the loan signing. Are you familiar with that? Are you aware of that? Because I've worked for other real estate companies, and we used mobile notaries. And I know that all of those notaries could not have been attorneys, nor, and of course they weren't working out of an office because they're mobile notaries. So they were going to, the individual's homes. But have you heard that before?
Yeah, in Georgia, I've actually only done closings with attorneys, so I've kind of just been limited in that regard. In terms of having worked with notaries, that has been true too, but the actual documentation was prepared by an attorney, and then a notary came and just officiated everything into closing.
Right. Okay. So maybe I'm misunderstanding something, because when I spoke with the gentleman at the state, he made it seem as if the attorney had to be present. So maybe I need to contact him again. And that is what was throwing me off. I am aware you're right. Either, an attorney's office or whomever. I worked at, well, one of them was State Farm, but, we would prepare the closing packages, things of that nature, and the notary would just pick them up and do the closing. But maybe I misunderstood, so I would have to give that gentleman a call back at the state office. That's the side business that I wanted to start, because I'm so familiar with the documents anyway. And when he said that, it sort of just pushed me back 10 steps. So.
Oh, okay.
But I will confirm that. But thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, another example of how government bureaucracy can certainly make some of our aspirations a lot rockier to even approach. So yeah, thanks for your input and your question. So
Okay,
I see Kevin's
Jared,
back. Welcome.
But I wanted, David brought up a really good point, and he was talking about what's happening on the inside. And I think that's very important. And that's what I was alluding to earlier, that all of our guests have tonight are just ordinary people. And I mean that in the most excellent way, that anyone can be an entrepreneur, start a business, be successful. You don't have to have all these high accolades and these mighty long lists of qualifications. And I wanted to ask each of the panelists, Danny and Ivan and Caroline, to please address the fact, how do you deal with your personality and going into entrepreneurship as far as personal issues? A lot of times people have had personal challenges in their life or different things. And I know all of you have overcome a lot of cool things that sometimes people think I'm not qualified, or I've failed in life, or I've bumped my head, I've run into a wall, so I'll never make it. Feel free to share anything you feel comfortable. We'll start with Caroline. Caroline, you're back on the Liberty Show.
Okay. So sometimes my personality would have me not necessarily go out and advertise myself, so then that obviously doesn't work if you want to attract clients. Mm-hmm. Another thing, which I guess fits in with the whole liberty concept, is that I have a pretty bad attitude towards authority, so.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. So, I mentioned the thing about the streams, but, another thing is zoning, when, the fact that that's very, based on just who gets it on what day and what mood they're in and what kind of relationship you have with them. It's not just the law. I mean, they have rules, but they seem to be bendable and moldable.
Right.
So I get angry just even dealing with things like variances and stuff, because it's just, I hate asking these authorities for their permission when it just again, it's like a nation of men, not a nation of laws.
Well, I thank you for that. And I know that you went through some personal struggles internally, emotionally, with your family, with different things. And you don't have to go into details unless you feel comfortable. But I think it's important for people to know that we all have struggles, and you've had some major things, some major changes in your life that you had to deal with while you still were trying to run a business. And you can do both. Is that correct? You can still make it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that the changes really slowed me down that much. I had fun with it all.
Okay. Well, let's ask Mr. Danny Kellenberger. Danny, what, any personal challenges in your life or any mountains you've run into that you've overcome in order to still be an entrepreneur?
Absolutely, Kevin. The biggest obstacle I had to overcome was me. Ooh. When I got started being an entrepreneur, I was a quiet, nasty, angry guy because life wasn't working out for me. So I blamed on everybody. It wasn't my fault. It was the economy. It was the people who told me how to do things. And so I really had to do a lot of growing and soul searching and figure out what. And the other part is I'm not a very outgoing person by nature. I'm more shy, quiet, and introvert.
I don't believe you. I don't believe.
Yeah, my wife is on here. She'll tell you. Right? I worked in a basement of a lady's house for 20 years by myself because that's how little I like people at the same time. So I had to learn how to be a better person. And that's the biggest thing I had to overcome, was that anyone could have success if you're willing to go through the process. And it doesn't have to be super painful. It just has to be slow, little increments, slowly over time. And then you change 1 degree every day, and all of a sudden 300 days later, you're 300 degrees different. Like, how did that happen? I look back in time and I want to flick myself in the forehead and say, what were you thinking, Danny? You know, it's not that complicated. So just learning how to get over my own issues, how to have some kind of belief in myself that, yes, I can be successful like I want to be, and that I deserve success, and just plug it into the right people and the right information to help me get where I wanted to go.
Great response. That's really what I'm keying in on, is that, like I said, I do entrepreneurship coaching and training, and I spend more time with my clients dealing with internal issues than I do business issues. And you hit it on the head. People just getting over themselves. And, you know, people aren't looking for you to be perfect, but I'm just so glad that, you know, you can be an entrepreneur and be very successful and not be this perfect person, not have it all, quote, together, you know, as we want to think. And I think that's very important for people to share. Now, back to my main man, Ivan. Ivan, I know you're perfect. You've never had any issues, but can you comment on this situation? Any
personal issues? Let me.
I mean, you've never had any. I know you're perfect. No mountains, no challenges.
500. 2 to 500.
But yeah, just talk about, you know, I think that a lot of times people want to start a business. They want to, but like Danny said, they run into themselves. But you know, that we've had challenges. We have, I'm not saying you, but people have low self-esteem. They have anger issues. They have authority issues. Just, they were born on the wrong side of the track. Their race, their gender, their sexual orientation. None of this has to stand in the way. Do you agree of being a successful entrepreneur?
I agree. And it has to also be with a matter of openness to kind of be in uncomfortable places.
Right.
I'll go ahead and just tell one of my more recent experiences. You know, I mentioned I have capital partners. In one case, I had for my sales business, a partner for that. And we had a pretty dramatic ripping apart. And when you're a partner with somebody for like a couple of years, it's like family, right? Being torn apart. So that sort of thing is like, it kind of messes with your head, right? Like, could I have done this better? Could that person have done this better? And it really forces some real candor with yourself and the other person about, this is not, you know, and is there something I could have done a year before to have changed this end result? So it kind of is an exciting but kind of painful thing to force yourself into growth, because like David said, you're not going to be motivated to do anything if you're not in a place of needing to do something, right? It's another sales tactic. You want to sell something that the person needs, like their water just shut off. They have to be like, let me go put that water back on right now. Okay, so yes, of course, there's been many personal things going on, but to me, it's an amazing thing. It's even why somebody like GE's Jack Welch, you know, that amazing CEO, was able to grow that company by, what is it, like 7,000% in a matter of like a decade. You know, it had to be real candor with himself and with his people and changing cultures in a massive scale type way.
Great. Well, that's really true. And I don't want to get stuck on this, but I run into so many people say, oh, I can't do this. I can't make it. You don't know, I'm an ex-felon, or I used to be a drug addict, or I've got a disability. But in spite of all of that, you can still be quite successful. And all three of you guys are just such great examples of that. Okay, Mr. Jared, who's next on the Liberty Show? Have we heard from Louis?
We have not heard from Louis. Shall we pull him up? Let's get him on here.
Louis, one of my favorite people. Louis, welcome. You're on the Liberty Show.
Hello, Kevin and everyone else.
Okay, Louis. Now, I had to eat my Wheaties for you. You think a little bit differently about private ownership of wealth than private.
That's an understatement, a little.
Well, give us a little of your view.
just on the concept of entrepreneurship in general, or as something specific?
Well, or, like, I think you kind of do you believe in people owning their own companies, or should the government own all the businesses, or people share their businesses? Tell us how you have studied and think about it.
Well, I guess it's kind of a complicated question. I don't really have a simple answer for it either. I guess if we're defining like entrepreneurship as, and I'm just looking at this dictionary website right now, if we're defining entrepreneurship as the activity of making money by starting or running businesses, especially when this involves taking financial risks, I feel like, I guess, let me ask you, when you hear the phrase entrepreneurship, like, what does that mean to you? Like, how do you conceptualize that in your head?
Well, let's ask our panelists. Panelists, who wants to answer that? Or someone lift your finger. What does entrepreneurship mean? That's a great question, actually. Who do we have? Anyone lifting their hand, Jared?
Running into lines. That's what I feel entrepreneurship is.
Okay, say it again. I'm sorry.
So running into the front lines. So being not afraid of just kind of like being like there was literally a general in the World War II that would, in front of all his soldiers, literally with his pistol, just go and, hey, come and get it. Like, that's the type of person an entrepreneur needs to be, like, not afraid of taking shots, because you have to also lead by example, right? How are your soldiers going to run with you if you're not there with them and like giving them that inspiration to move forward?
So where we're going at with Louis, we have to let you know he's one of our more he's not totally convinced about free markets logic for capitalism. He's a little more on the socialist Marxist type side. So what do you think, since we have you on, Ivan, about you owning your own property, you owning your company? Or should the government own your company, or everyone work together? What do you think the benefits are for you owning the company as an individual?
If you want to own my assets, I'll set up some machine gun turrets outside my houses, and you could just come on.
Okay. What do you think, Caroline?
Well, I said before, I have a pretty bad attitude towards authority. To me, being an entrepreneur means I get to decide, what the focus of the business is, what I'm going to do when, and that's the freedom to fail. But if the government is owning my business, then God, I feel like one of those people in the Wizard of Oz, there at the witch's castle. Just like, it's just like go into work each day, just droning on and just, no freedom of choice in what I'm going to do. Just whatever they say, I got to do it,
Okay. So just to summarize, is Danny still on, or is he still here? Or I think he got kicked out too. Okay. But we'll get him back on. Entrepreneurship is private ownership of property. You own your own company, and less government regulation, less government rule, where you get to make the profit. And profit motive, which we haven't talked about much tonight, and I think David, I'm sure McKay alluded to this, is not a bad thing. And we've not talked about the profit motive, because usually when we think of profit and corporation, we always think of greed. Not necessarily. So is it bad to make money or to make a profit? But let's go back to David. David has a comment. David, you're back on the Liberty Show.
Entrepreneurship means to me that I'm willing to risk my efforts to get a payday. And I'm not out there to steal from other people. I'm not out there to gorge, but I have an idea, I have a product, and I can provide a livelihood by becoming an entrepreneur. And there's nothing wrong with it. Once the government starts to get involved, we know they never stop. They want more and they more and they more. And it goes back to the old, who will help me bake this bread? Not I, said the pig, not I, said the cow. But when it gets time to eat, everybody else wants to partake in your reward. And just like when I go to school, if the teacher grades on the curve, should they take you, Kevin, that got an A, and now you get a B, so I get raised from a D to a C? You would say that's not fair. So entrepreneurship is relying on yourself, and that's all people want, is they want to be productive. And the way of being productive is keeping government out of the way.
And do you agree, David, with the profit motive that we should be able to keep some of our profits, that you made money, or do you have to share it with everyone? Do you have to share it in a socialistic way that we have to lift up all of society?
Well, once you come to share, those that are quick to put their hand out are not productive. They do not produce. So that's why people want to come to the U.S. is because of what we have to offer. It's not out of greed.
Right. I think that's really a great point. And I don't want to open a couple words. We're going to go back to Lloyd, then I want to hear what Tim has to say, because I know he'll straighten us out as usual. But, people come to America for freedom, ownership of property. They don't have to work for the government. They don't have to take care of their neighbors. If you choose to, if you as a Christian or whatever your faith, or just out of the goodness of your heart to help others, that's fine. But should it be mandated by the government? Do we have to take care of other people? As Tim likes to say, if I didn't make the baby, have the fun to make it, do I have to take care of it? That's not a bad thing. But so what do you think, Lloyd? We're going to go back to you. Do you think that free markets, profit motives, okay, or should we be all helping each other or the government? Lloyd.
Well, I guess just thinking about what everybody said about what entrepreneurship is, concept, it's about trying to make a profit, it's about taking risks, it's about trying to make your way in the world by being innovative, or attempting to be innovative, I guess. And something Dave mentioned that I thought was interesting was that it's part of it is people wanting to be productive in some manner. It's actually something I've thought about quite a bit before. Like putting aside anything to do with capitalism as a system, and hierarchies, and desire to accumulate capital, I sort of think of entrepreneurship as being all about innovation, is what comes to mind, or what it is ideally.
I agree with you. So is it okay to be innovative as a person, or do we have to be innovative for the whole good of society? Can I make a product, create it, and make money off of it, or do I have to give it away and share it with all of society, in your view?
Well, it's not really, I don't really think of it as being that binary. And generally it's like, no, I don't think of it as being like coercive like that. I guess just to continue my point, I think of entrepreneurship as being sort of the expression of the human urge to better oneself, or to better one's condition, to put it in a very kind of pretentious way. Like entrepreneurship, like by itself it's sort of like the ambition for greater production and achievement, like Dave said. And I feel like that by itself is not bad. It's just that sort of making entrepreneurship about, it's not about innovating. It's not about introducing like novel ideas you have to the world. It's about accumulating capital. It's about profitability.
Is that bad? What's wrong with that?
Well, obviously, like being profitable, like when you just say it like that, it's not like negative, but I just feel like it's sort of, it has to do with kind of the outlook on entrepreneurship. It's like if we frame these issues exclusively in terms of profitability and like only thinking about the money aspect of it, because a lot of good ideas, like a lot of innovative ideas, are not necessarily like profitable at the time that people think of them. Like you think of Nikola Tesla having kind of bold new ideas about how electricity should be in the early 20th century, there was the whole debate about alternating current. And so people like Thomas Edison, who are against that innovation because it affected their interests, they sort of went out of their way to prevent that innovation from happening, burying Nikola Tesla. I just feel like I'm sorry. This is a very complicated topic. I'm not sure I'm not.
Well, no, you're fine. I want to, hone back in on the point that not just with you personally, but for right now in our society, we're acting like making money is bad. People come to this country, they immigrate to this country, they literally die trying to get here. They want to go to school here so they can make money, because you're still going to need money. You don't have to let money rule you or worship you, but making money is not bad. So let's talk about that for a minute. Let's go to our panelists. We don't want to leave them out. Panelists, what do you think of the profit motive or making money? Is that good or bad? Who's first? Danny, you're back on. What do you think of making money?
I am back on. Thanks, Kevin. I think you were contagious earlier, and I caught what you had. But I think it's all about making money. And I think in a true capitalistic, where it's a free marketplace, that the consumers vote for your product. And if they like your product, they buy it. And it's a win-win again. The consumers are smart enough to know that they're not going to buy anything that's not good. And if people do good by selling a good product that people are happy about and they want to buy more of it, that's a great thing. But I always felt that business was designed to have the government be like an umpire and not be on your side or that side, but just to be an official, so to speak, and not be on any particular side, so that we could make products and we could go out and sell businesses, ideas and things, and let the people who want our businesses decide if they want them or not. And if they don't want them, we go out of business real fast, don't we? But if they want them and there's a demand for our products, then we'll be successful. And I find that most people who are truly successful have a heart for giving back to the community some way down the road anyway.
Right. And I totally agree. If anybody knows me, literally, I know Tim and Damon and Jared, I'm a giver, too much of a giver sometimes. But should we be forced to help people, forced to take care of other people? And that's what entrepreneurship, you first want to take care of yourself. And I always tell people, make money. Then once you've made some money, you can go out and help others. But if you're, but it's just not a bad thing. So let me ask Ivan, what do you think about the profit motive, making money? Is it bad? Is it negative?
So on your last sentence, I've had to deal with that. Like, I used to give money to the point of putting myself in danger. Like, it was obnoxious. So I had to come to grips with it. Like, hey, in order to be able to give more, I have to make more.
Right.
Just like generate money off of a tree, right? I have to think of a product. And like Danny said, like, I could think of products that would improve the world as part of my business. So affordable housing is a part of that cycle that I make profit from. I rent properties $600 to $1,200 a month. And for many communities that my houses are in, that's a really hard thing to find. But I get them at such a good price, the properties, that I'm able to make a profit, and they're able to have a stable household instead of gentrification pushing them out every mile every year. They have to take more transportation. They have to take another bus. They have to change schools, causing more trauma on the child. I've actually had to live this myself because I was in the middle of gentrification in Chicago. So
right.
Profit is critical, right? You can't give money that you aren't making yourself.
And another great point I'm going to kick in that I'm going to let Caroline speak is that one good thing about entrepreneurs and owning your own business, that's a great way to help others by offering them a job. You're not giving them a hand out, but a hand up. You're not saying, here, I'm going to take care of you, but I'm going to help you take care of yourself. And that is a great thing. Isn't that great? So Caroline, what do you think about the profit motive and making money?
Well, certainly in theory, it's a very good thing. I find that with me, I'm more motivated by just the enjoyment of doing it, or the satisfaction from pleasing the client and coming up with a good design. And so I have to fight my own personality trait that I tend to charge too little, and so that hurts the profitability. Again, so that's one of the personality traits you asked about that earlier. I have to fight that one. I have to,
But honestly, statistics have shown that people are more successful and make more money at things that they're happy doing. Do you agree?
Yeah, but as far as making money, there's more to it than that. But that's certainly.
Right. But it's not a bad thing. What I'm saying is, I'm not saying that should be it. That's the catch-all. But I guess as some people would say, some of these liberal colleges, how I am about college, they're just teaching all the greater good of society, and let's just help people. And all of that's fine and wonderful. I've spent my life doing that. But there's nothing wrong with actually making money. So let's move on. Tim, my main man, you're on the Liberty Show. Straighten us out. Bring us up to par.
Well, I want to thank you and everyone on the show. A special shout out to Dr. Dana, a great friend. We haven't seen each other in a while. To Carolyn. Hey, Carolyn, how are you? Ivan, Damon. I just want to take a moment to piggyback on David's earlier point. Here in this country, and in general, throughout the world, but specifically here in this country, David brought up a very good point that if the government continues in the vein that it's been going for many, many decades now of regulating, that folks who are trained, folks who are educated, folks that we want in this country to live here, to prosper, they will look for other countries to settle because of government regulations. Here in this country, in the United States of America, the government keeps me from being the best me. And the way the government does that, and not only does it do it to me, but specifically since I'm Black, I like talking about Black folks, and other people who look like me, I like talking about brown folks. The way the government keeps Black and brown folks down is through government regulations. Let's look at home ownership. This is something that both sides like to talk about. The Republicans and the Democrats, oh, we need more home ownership, blah, blah, blah. It's the greatest path to generational wealth. Well, the government created regulations that keeps families from transferring wealth from one generation to another. Well, how did the government do that? One of the ways the government did that was by killing and ending assumable mortgages. Most folks don't know what an assumable mortgage is because of their age, but years ago, up until I believe the early 80s, a parent who had a mortgage on their home could give the mortgage, they could assume the mortgage to one of their children. When the government killed that program, it stifled generational wealth within the Black and brown communities. Black and brown communities were already suffering from a lack of generational wealth. But here comes the government telling us that it knows what's best for us. Entrepreneurship is the greatest expression of liberty that an individual can obtain. But yet the government gets in our way. Why does the government get in our way? Damon alluded to this point. Why does the government get in the way of the truckers by creating these absurd regulations? What difference does it make if a trucker has to use an electric log versus a handwritten log? The reason why the government gets in the way of the entrepreneur spirit of the individual is because the government wants to keep us down. This is how the government progresses. The government creates a problem and says, look, here's a problem, and I'm here to save you from this problem. If the government got out of the way of the Black and brown individual, Black and brown communities in this country will prosper. But until that day, we'll always be at the feet of the government groveling. And that's the way the government likes us, groveling and asking and begging for crumbs.
Okay. So I want to just piggyback on that with what Tim said about entrepreneurship, how it has lifted up, especially people of color and minorities, or, the poor. And that's the great thing about entrepreneurship is that, even though you were, say, quote, born on the wrong side of the track, you can still be successful from entrepreneurship. But sometimes we do have, as Tim said, the government gets in the way. Speaking of that, Dr. Dana, we have a very famous person on the line. Dana, I just want to ask you a question. You specialize in the LGBT community and transgender. Can you just talk about, have they seen any challenges as entrepreneurs? They have actually, that community really has changed America. Even in Atlanta, I don't know if people know, when Atlanta had the white flight and everyone moved out to the suburbs and the downtown, the city, Midtown was dead. When the LGBT community moved in, they brought in coffee houses, antiques, and started remodeling and flipping houses, Ivan. And they've been a very vital force to our economy. So Dana, can you comment on that? Because sometimes it's not always easy for people that are transgender, LGBT, to be successful in business because of people's prejudice or discrimination. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I can comment on that. I'm afraid that if discrimination against LGBT people comes back into vogue, that they're going to be clustered around places like Atlanta and places like Portland, Oregon, and so on, that are have chosen freedom and don't discriminate. So I think Atlanta is kind of an island amidst a lot of discrimination, and that's why LGBT people are attracted here. And I think I hope that discrimination is going to go away, but it's always a struggle.
Well, I'm going to ask you, I was going to wait till we had you on, guys. This is Dr. Dana Bevan. What is it? Harvard, you're Princeton, right? I don't know. Big
Yeah.
shot. The number one transgender LGBT expert in the world. We're on the air with her. And author, Good Morning America, CNN, all that good stuff. But I have to ask you my question. Do we have to bake a cake for transgender people if we don't want to as an entrepreneur? What is your answer?
I would say no. I think that's a contract between people or between a person and a corporation, and that shouldn't be restricted. Frankly, if someone resisted baking me a cake, not that I'm getting married anytime soon, but I would want to know that. I don't want them to, bake a cake that I wouldn't want. So it's fine by me if they want to discriminate. I'll just go to the next bake shop over. So I'm resistant to those kinds of laws and precedents.
Well, I just wanted to throw that in there because that's such a big controversy about, with entrepreneurs, do they have the freedom to be them, whether it's, their personal religious beliefs or whatever. But to me, business is business. You brought up a good point. Business is business, and that's just something. Jared,
just to finish that off, anybody who's in business and refuses to serve LGBT people is shooting themselves in the foot, and turning away customers is never a good policy.
Well, and that's my point. It shouldn't matter what their sexual orientation or race or whatever. It's about business. And, I'm sorry, Lloyd, making money. But you can help people while you make money too. Ivan and them brought a good. Okay, so Jared, do we have anyone else? Any final comments? Or did you want to say anything?
Anyone else? Comments?
I know we do have one question, and then I'm sorry, Jared. We have a question that was typed in from Quincy. She's out in Berkeley, California, and she wants to ask our panelists, how do you balance your work and life situation since you work for yourself? Do you get to have fun? Are you always working? If you're at home working, how do you balance that? Let's start with Danny this time. Danny, how do you balance your work-life situations?
That's a great question, Kevin. And one of the reasons I wanted to be an entrepreneur is because I wanted to be available to be a dad and a husband to all the things that were important to me, and not be at somebody else's schedule telling me when I was hungry, when I wanted to get up, when I wanted to go home, when I wanted to see my family. As an entrepreneur, I take control of my calendar and I put my big rocks in first. Or the biggest, most pressing things for me, as far as my son, his games, my wife, what does she need me to do? And I put all those in on the calendar first, and then I build my schedule around that. So there's 168 hours in a week. And there's plenty of time for you to do everything that you want to do if you put the big rocks in first and then backfill around the rest and keep the main thing.
Great point. And, I want to, I don't know if we mentioned this earlier, but the business you have with Life Leadership and the financial literacy, this is kind of your secondary, just not your main job. And that's something that I think we want to really bring out, that to be an entrepreneur, it doesn't have to be full time, that you can do stuff on the side, part-time, a quarter of the time. Is that true, Danny?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, most people work 40, 50 hours a week, and there's still 100 hours left a week that you could do. If you could just find 5, 10, 15 hours a week and prioritize that short-term to get what you want long-term. I'm all about being short-term ambitious so I can be long-term lazy.
He's funny. Okay, Ivan, what do you think about, answer Quincy's question from Berkeley, California. What do you think about work and life balance? How do you balance the two since you work for yourself?
So in the first year, especially of being an entrepreneur, like, full time, like having left my job, I had this thought process of like, hey, I got to look at all these YouTube videos. I got to be this perfect, 5 a.m. in the morning, go jogging, sprinting, go hike a 500-foot mountain. And then at some point I realized this is all, I'm living for them. I'm not living for myself. And I had
Great point. And no, let me piggyback on that, because a lot of times entrepreneurs think, okay, I want to work for myself. It's total freedom, but you still are working for somebody, and you can actually be in just as much bondage. So that, go ahead, continue on that.
Yeah, so you have to come to grips with that and see what your body actually wants to do. So some people I know work from like 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. That's their like maximum brain space time. For me, how I roll out my day nowadays, even coming into knowing my own personality more, I'm a guy that just kind of lives in the moment. I'm not much of a planner. I've come to grips with that. That's another thing I had to ignore YouTube University about, like having everything drawn out. I figured out my own personality through a variety of tests and stuff, figured it out, what feels natural to me. So nowadays, I kind of wake up, listen to worship music. That's what drives me to go and have energy for the rest of the day. And from there, I just attack whatever the priority is of the day for the business. As you can imagine, I have like 500 tasks in a day. So I just, like Danny said, just prioritize what's actually important.
Well, you brought up a really good point, and I'm not trying to just keep reiterating, but these are great points that I teach my clients, and that anyone looking to do a business or better their business or leadership skills, you kind of got to go with the flow. You know, you don't have to fit into life's box or society's box. You know, everyone gives you these tests and you got to do this, you got to be like that. But I like how you say you live in the moment. Sometimes you just have to be you. You just have to be free. And lastly, what about you, Caroline? How do you balance that work life, especially working from home?
Well, so pre-COVID, what I was doing a lot was, I guess it's a little like what Danny was saying, that I would schedule things. So like I had dance classes a couple nights a week and usually another dance event in the week. And so, you know, you got to be there at that exact time. So you got to, forces you to stop. You got to stop, you know, and then,
right.
And then you're in a completely different mindset when you're dancing. So you don't necessarily want to come back and go back to work at, you know, 11 or 12 o'clock at night. Similarly, there were a lot of in-person networking events, and I imagine now that everyone's gotten so comfortable with Zoom, I probably won't do as many of those going forward. But yeah, it has been a little harder with COVID. I mean, I had a client call with a structural question late yesterday, and so, you know, I was at the grocery store at almost midnight last night, you know. So.
Yeah, well, you know, that's what I wanted to know, you know, people to know it can be challenging. It's very rewarding, but there are some challenges, but you guys have all shown that you can still overcome it and be successful. Thank you guys so much. You made this a great show. Any last comments, Jared, or you can wrap us up?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. This was quite a fun and enlightening show. It was great hearing everyone's personal experiences and perspectives and just talking about this really important topic together. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, guys. Any final comments from our panelists? Once again, as you say your final word, give us your contact information or business anyone wants to reach out to you. So let's start with Ivan.
Please.
Last word, Ivan.
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for your time, y'all. I really appreciate it on this Saturday evening. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. So yeah, leavetheratcage.com if you want to stay in touch with the happenings I have going on. I love, it's a passion of mine to mentor folks, help people scale businesses. Like it's like an entrepreneurial journey, right, for all of us. So being able to help anybody else get into real estate, you know, rental properties, wholesaling, even maybe help their own business. Like, you know, once you learn business principles, they could be usually drawn across different businesses. So I have a mastermind group, you know, we help each other out and give advice based on our circumstances, our experiences. So it's a great passion of mine to be able to train y'all. And yeah, have a great weekend.
Okay, thank you. And your book, what's the name of the book again?
Oh yeah, From Minimum Wage to Leaving the Rat Cage. Okay,
and it's available on Amazon. And we will have your contact or links in our show notes. Thank you. Miss Caroline, my favorite lady of liberty. Give us your final word and your contact info.
So, yeah, so basically, I mean, I guess I would just say if anyone, you know, wants to adjust their house to fit their personality better, or if they have a child or grandchild or someone they want a playhouse for, I could spend a long time going into all the options and possibilities for these playhouses. But my architectural website is is CL for Caroline Leyburn, and then uniquehomedesign.com.
Okay.
And
And can I play in those houses? Or is it for adults or are they just for kids?
well, we can make them as big as you want.
Okay, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Now, go ahead, and what was the other contact information?
I was just going to give my phone number, which is 404-963-8688.
Okay, thank you so much. And my main man, Danny. Danny, give us a final word. Take us out, Danny, and give us your contact so people can reach you and get some help.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you guys sharing with me. I learned a lot just by being on this call from all the great minds on here, all the great opinions. You can reach me. You can find out more about me at DannyKellenberger.com. And I'd love to sit down and share with anybody who's interested more about the Life Leadership, our mobile app platform, and how we're helping people save money and make money all at the same time. And teach people about liberty and true economics and all the things that aren't really taught anymore today. So it's a great thing we're doing.
Really, it is. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you for another great show. Remember to share this on your YouTube, share it on your Facebook, and just go out there and let's change the world. Liberty to everyone. Good night. Have a great day.